Is giving up responsibilities easier? This is a pretty tough question because a lot of the times it actually does feel the easier way, right? It removes responsibility from yourself and it's given responsibility to somebody else. And on the surface, that sounds like a pretty good deal, right? I'm absolved of my responsibility, not a big deal. But here's the catch 22. If you give your responsibility to somebody else, you lose all control. And when you compare it that way, taking responsibility, the ownership of one's actions, thoughts, and feelings, versus giving all power to somebody else, in the end, that's a pretty raw deal. So let me read you something right here. We have been trained to think that giving up responsibility for ourselves is easier than being responsible. It is not. And he goes on to talk about some other stuff in this section, but what's really happening is it's a core belief issue where the immediate benefit of responsibility removal is traded for powerlessness. But the problem is powerlessness causes an array of issues, from self-confidence to self-worth to feeling out of control to not getting the things you want in life, because you create everything in your life whether you realize it or not, because your attitude attracts things around you. For example, if you are thinking, oh, there's only problems in the world, you're going to see a lot of problems. And what's interesting is people bring their problems to you, which is not necessarily what you want. Versus if you see solutions everywhere, all of a sudden people start bringing you solutions. And you see opportunities, and then you see business ventures and business partners, and like things start happening. So mindset is the vast majority, 80+%. And that's what's really starting interesting. So here's kind of a scenario of mindset, if you will. You have a person sitting at a table at a restaurant, and he orders a cup of coffee. The waitress brings him a cup of coffee, but notices something. She notices that coffee cup is starting to spill. So what does she do? She grabs that cup of coffee before it lands in the person's lap. So in her mind, she's thinking, uh-oh, that cup of coffee is dripping. I better grab it. So her reality is, I'm a server. I provide service. I want to take care of this person. Therefore, I'm protecting him from getting coffee spilled on him. Whereas the person ordering the coffee, his reality is anger. He's, people take things from me. Don't touch my coffee. Right? Two totally different viewpoints over the same reality. So what's the difference? It's all perception. He's perceiving as somebody's taking away from something. So when you have a negative belief, that negative belief is permeating everything around you. His negative belief is people are taking things from me. So I would venture to guess that in money and in business, in his relationships, in his kids, he's going to see how people are going to start taking things away from him. This is probably going to prevent him from getting the things that he wants in life. Versus detaching for a second and saying, oh, this waitress, this lady, this server was actually trying to help me. She was preventing something bad from happening to me. Totally different view. Tony Robbins talks about things like your emotional default is your emotional home, and where you live, you get a lot of it. So if his emotional home is anger, he's going to find anger and is going to lead with anger. What do you think his relationships are going to be like? It's going to be a lot of anger. Whatever you lead with is what you get more of. The other person is therefore probably going to respond in anger and probably going to start doing what he thinks, which is take things away. So the question is, what do we do about it? We can do many things. There's lots of practices. You can meditate. You can do subconscious coaching, which is what I love. It's what I do. You can read personal development books like this one. This is Why Is This Happening to Me Again by Dr. Michael Rice. Wonderful book. You can practice awareness. Think of a moment. In that moment, what did you choose? How can you see it? How can others see it? So there's the 5 viewpoints. First person, how I see it. Second person, how somebody else involved sees it. So in this case, the waitress. The third person, an observer, another table perhaps, witnessing the scenario. Number 4 is somebody, we call it the meta picture, right? Somebody larger than the possibility of the scenario. If you're religious, this may be a God figure or something like that, or a guardian angel perhaps. And the 5th one, which is a little bit harder to think about, is the space in between. It's a little kind of a thought experiment. What would somebody in between these scenarios see? And then another way is lead with empathy. How can this scenario benefit me? What's interesting about the scenario? Ask the better questions. Ask the positive questions. How is this person trying to help me? What can I learn from this? That's interesting. What is this about? So you can ask and reframe all the questions into something that is more useful than leading with, oh, that person's just trying to hurt me, or any of the negative variety of questions. And a lot of times we get stuck in past events. The mind is in a way that we like to conserve energy. So in the first time we encounter something, we create a habitual pattern, a habit. And these habits get replayed as if they were programmed, which we basically are. And we just unconsciously repeat these patterns over and over and over again. But the cool thing is every time that pattern comes up is an opportunity to change it. So if we can recognize that pattern, we can then reprogram that into something more helpful or more beneficial. I never really like to put terms in bad or good or positive or negative as much as is it beneficial or not beneficial. Because if we have a goal in mind or a direction that we want to head, then we have a destination. We can course correct to that. If it's not hurting you, then maybe not necessarily worth changing. But I would argue, if you have a destination in mind and you're not getting there, or not getting there as quickly as you'd like, maybe it's a little course correction involved. If you need help with any of this, if you like to explore the tools of the subconscious, feel free to message me. I'd love to work with you. Otherwise, have a beautiful day, and I hope this lesson teaches you well. See you guys tomorrow.